Hello, welcome to the self-learning podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 22, Conceptualizing Ethnicity. And our topic is Instrumentalist Approach. Students of ethnicity do ask, is ethnicity an aspect of human nature, or is it to whatever extent defined situationally, strategically, or tactically manipulable, and capable of change at both the individual and collective levels? Is it socially constructed? We have already reflected upon the first question and made you familiar with different positions that scholars take on ethnicity being an integral part of human nature. We will now discuss the second question, also discussed as instrumentalist approach to ethnicity. The instrumentalist approach became popular in sociological and political science writing in late 60s and early 70s. Names of Frederick Barth and Paul Brass are commonly associated with popularizing instrumentalist position in social science and literature. Also sometimes referred to as situationalist perspective, it emphasizes plasticity in maintaining ethnic group boundaries. It argues that people can change membership and move from one ethnic group to another. The change can take place either because of circumstances or, as Paul Brass says, because of manipulation of political elites. He regarded ethnicity as a product of political myths created and manipulated by cultural elites in their pursuit of advantages and power. The cultural forms, values, and practices of ethnic groups become resources for elites in competition for political power and economic advantage. They become symbols and referents for the identifications of members of group, which are called up in order to ease the creation of political identity. In his two books, Language, Religion and Politics in North India, Ethnicity and Nationalism, Theory and Comparison, Brass closely examines issues of ethnicity and nationalism in the context of India. Brass borrowed DeVos' definition of ethnicity that viewed ethnicity as consisting of subjective, symbolic, or emblematic use by a group of people of any aspect of culture in order to differentiate themselves from other groups, and modified it, replacing the last phrase to suggest in order to create internal cohesion and differentiate themselves from other groups. In this explanation, Brass is asserting the importance of symbols and the need for internal cohesion for ethnicity to flourish. When we examine these assertions in empirical context, we can understand why political parties constantly keep inventing and reinventing symbols attached to different groups for commanding loyalty in situations of political realignments. Cow slaughter, Muslim personal law, and dwindling importance of Urdu language are some of the symbolic issues that are frequently raised in political debates. Frederick Barth, on the other hand, was always convinced that the focus for the investigation of ethnicity should be the ethnic boundary that defines the group, adapting the definition that ethnicity is a social organization of cultural differences. Barth, in his symposium, Ethnic Groups and Boundaries, regarded ascription and self-ascription critical to the process of establishing group boundaries. Barth, in his critique of the corporate model, argued that this elucidation of ethnic group assumed that various groups in the society lived in relative isolation as an island in itself. In his interpretation, ethnic groups as ontological collectivities are malleable. He argued that ethnic identity and its production and reproduction in social interaction is to be treated as problematic feature of social reality. He recommended that ethnographers must examine the practices and processes whereby ethnicity and ethnic boundaries are socially constructed and perpetuated. To arrive at this understanding, Barth asserted that this construction is possible only when we acknowledge that ethnic groups are categories of ascription and identification by the actors themselves. Barth's model of ethnicity highlights the following features. Analysis of ethnicity begins by understanding the situation held by social actors. For example, actors are being asked to ascertain their identity in a situation of confrontation or cooperation. The shades that ethnic identity acquire will be essentially determined by this perception. Second, the focus of attention then becomes the maintenance of ethnic boundaries. If it is a situation of confrontation, ethnicity attains center stage. It expresses itself in far more assertive terms than it would do either in a neutral situation or underplay differences in a situation asking for economic or political cooperation. The structured interaction between us and them across boundary is defined by a strategic situation. Third and most critical of these criteria are notions of ascription, both by members of the ethnic group in question and those outside the group. Ethnicity acquires political impetus primarily because of this criteria of ascription. In situations where an individual assumes himself to be a member but is not so perceived by others, his own sense of belongingness carries little or no weightage at all. Fourth, the ethnicity is not fixed, it is situationally defined. Most interesting example of this is observed in situations of transmigration, wherein individuals may ascribe themselves to different ethnic groups or attach different degrees of importance to their sense of belonging. In other words, either overplay or underplay ethnicity situationally. Fifth, the ecological issues are particularly influential in determining ethnic identity. If economic niches are constructive and resource limited, it is invariably seen that in such situation ethnicity becomes much more pronounced. Commenting on Barth's understanding on ethnicity, Jenkins writes, Barth emphasizes that ethnic identity is generated, confirmed, or transformed in the course of interaction and transaction between decision making, strategizing individual. Ethnicity in ethnic group and boundaries are perhaps a matter of politics, decision making, and goal orientation. Shared culture is, in this model, best understood as generated in and by processes of ethnic boundary maintenance rather than the other way round. The production and reproduction of difference versus external and others is what creates the image of similarity internally versus each other. Sociologists and social anthropologists have argued that this model of ethnicity is essentially borrowed from the works of Max Weber. Barth facilitated its understanding by differentiating it from notions of race and culture. According to Vermeulen and Grovers, Barth presented ethnicity or ethnic identity as an aspect of social organization, not of culture. Wallman understanding and argues that ethnicity is the process by which their difference is used to enhance the sense of us for purposes of organization or identification. Because it takes two, ethnicity can only happen at the boundary of us, in contact or confrontation, or by contrast with them. And as the sense of us changes, so the boundary between the us and them shifts. Not only does the boundary shift, but the criteria which mark it change. This explanation makes it clear that ethnicity is transactional. It is essentially impermanent and in that sense has nothing to do with biological inheritance. It is this feature that distinguishes instrumentalist approach from pre-modernist perception of ethnicity. Ethnic identity is shifting, it is always two-sided. Our being Hindus or Muslims, Gujarati or Telugu is immaterial unless these identities are locked in vis-a-vis situations. The key issue in these interactions is manipulation of perceived significant differences in their generation. Abner Cohen, while analyzing Barth's contributions, have differences with his perception of ethnicity. Handelman believes that the cultural content of ethnicity is an important aspect of its social organization. A crude dichotomy between the cultural and the social is misleading. To this, he adds that ethnicity is socially organized or incorporated in differing degrees of groupness on which depends its silence and importance of individual experience. Moving from the casual to corporate, Handelman distinguishes the ethnic set, ethnic category, the ethnic network, the ethnic association, and the ethnic community. Ethnic identities can, for example, organize everyday life without ethnic groups, featuring locally as significant social forms. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.